How much does material and maker matter when it comes to sound? This is a question I get constantly from people, and I have a really interesting idea to show you how different the same scale can sound, even on the same type of material. So in this video, we're going to look at 5 or 6 D Kurds, all from different makers, with mostly stainless. One's going to be nitrided steel, but I want you to listen for how different the sound is on each of them. And we're going to take a look at these components to help us pay attention to the quality and the types of sounds that we're evaluating. So let's take a look at how we're going to organize our thinking for this. Okay, so some of the things we're listening for as we're evaluating a handpan are the tonality of the instrument. Is there a lot of attack? Can you hear when you hit the instrument, are you hearing more of the note or more of your finger strike? Also, when we play a note, do we hear the note as a stable pitch or a strike with a rise, or does it blare? And blaring is when you hit a note and it has like a warble within it. Most handpan tuners can get rid of this in their own instruments, but sometimes instruments have a warble and they blare very easily. Also, we're listening for the length of sustain. So when I hit a note, does it rise and linger with the harmonic staying, or does it rise and linger with the fundamental staying? Some people like just the harmonics. Some people like just the fundamental remaining, but depending on the tuner, either of those could be true or both. Also, the way the instrument is shaped. So if we're looking at the tone fields, do you see a lot of hammer marks, or do you see a completely clean area that's been obviously hammered, but is very finely hammered in a way that you can't see the strike marks? Some of the best sounding instruments I own have the most visible hammer marks, so it's not an indication of quality, it's just a characteristic of the instrument. Also, stability. You can usually judge the stability of your instrument. Again, if it blares very easily, I don't usually trust it, but instruments that have stability are going to be able to hold their tune long term, and that has partly to do with how many times they have been retuned, fired, retuned. So with those components in mind, I want you to listen to these 5 Kurds. Let's take a look. Last up, we have an integral hung. Completely different sound when they're stainless, but I just want you to hear how different this can sound. Integral is only one note different than the Kurd, so I'm counting it as a Kurd. So ultimately, what can we take from this comparison? That well-tuned, finely crafted instruments can have a variety of sounds. And a lot of what people say is quality more has to do with preference. To me, a quality instrument is stable. It's not going to come out of tune easily. It's an instrument that has enough isolation where it's not activating notes that sound dissonant when I'm hitting another note. And for me, it's also an instrument that has the right sort of flavor and feeling. A note that is completely isolated has a tendency to feel more like a xylophone or a marimba, which is beautiful, but it's a particular taste. Handpans can be very isolated or they can be very open and integrated. And that is a wild comparison between the two, but people just have a flavor preference between them. Because most of these were stainless steel, we're inherently working with longer sustain, but as you heard in this, the type of sustain was very different. Some of them had a note that lingered on, and it was more of the fundamental that stayed. So this is an example of that. This was the one that had more of the fundamentals more prominent as it's hanging on. Whereas if I was going to play this So Handpan, this one is very much fundamental. That's the prominent note within it. Or if I was playing an Ayasa, this one has the higher frequencies linger. And you'd really be surprised which instruments, even from makers we consider the best makers, if you listen with this type of ear, which instruments have crosstalk, which ones are not very clean. You really have to, we're in a funny time now where you can get a great quality instrument for $1,200. And you can even get one for $800. Aura Handpans in the US makes great instruments for $800. But at any price point, you have all of these variables. And even the best makers have instruments that maybe aren't their prime handpans. So you really should do your research in asking to hear an instrument's recording before you buy it. I would really ask that anybody looking to get a Kurd from myself or anybody requests the video. Because as you heard, a Kurd scale can sound completely different than another Kurd scale. And every handpan is going to have a different flavor. I could have 4 handpans from the same maker, and I might like two of them and feel like about the other two. And it is less to do with quality and more to do with sort of the ecosystem of that instrument. So if you found this video interesting, be sure to let me know what you'd like to see next, and I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Stay well.